I had arrived at my fastest self yet, and I was only getting started. I've got some big goals for 2025, and I want to share them with you today. Okay, so before we start, I want you to go to the comments, and I want you to write your running goal for 2025, something that you really want to do, and something that you can return to keep yourself accountable. So, my name's Salvatore. I'm a humble 9 to 5 office worker, someone who likes to, while he's working in the corporate world, wear a suit with a tie, roll up my sleeves after work, cook amazing, yummy plant-based meals for me and my girlfriend, someone who wants to lace up my running shoes and cross the finish line faster than I ever thought possible. To kind of explain this, in 2019, I set my sights on the idea of running 5Ks under 20 minutes. And as soon as I achieved that, boom, that was it. I didn't run it anymore. And all that progress I made was more or less lost. I didn't have the idea of thinking bigger, bolder, and what's next. So that kind of was a big fallacy of mine, and it was something that was plaguing me, something I wanted to return to form and show that I could do it, which I had done. So I'd also kind of in the process of that had somewhat also got myself injured, which is also really interesting too. And I kind of shared the process of how that happened. So I noticed that my goals were a bit all over the place. So I kind of want to share with you today how to kind of create those goals and how to go about them. And then there's also another element to that, the idea of incorporating structured training. And that's important because structured training gives you it gives you like mini goals to check along the way to see your progress, and it'll kind of share a hack with you that you'll be able to see, well, how we take the structured training, evaluate it to see if we're on track with our goals, off track, and just gives you something a bit more inspiring to work towards. If, say, you're setting a big race, but there's such a big time between it, it kind of helps you stay on track, the idea of structured training, and I'll explain kind of more of that as well. And then also, I guess, the reflections and adjustments. This comes from actually doing the running. So before anything, you'll need a Strava account. Strava is it's like Facebook but for runners. Basically, you track all your runs, it keeps you accountable. You can kind of see distance you cover and the pace you went. It's important because it kind of shows you where you started and kind of where you're going. It's like a log, a way to keep yourself accountable, right? And that's important for analyzing your runs themselves. See, each kind of K that you run is dictated at a speed. It's either pace per mile if you're American or pace per K if you're. That will be kind of your yardstick to see how you're going and kind of how it translates to tackling the structured training and runs you're doing. And then also how well you're progressing in them to see what needs to be adjusted or kind of how you're finding that. Which is kind of where I take a lot of my running splits, which are kind of the K by K breakdown, and kind of share that with ChatGPT to say, hey, here's what I'm doing, and kind of how that will also factor into setting up your goals themselves. By running enough, you kind of get a bit of a background about what you can do and where your kind of your baseline's at. And then as you kind of run, interestingly enough, like you start to think about what you'd like to do with your running, because funnily enough, when you run, you think about running, which is really funny. So it kind of like perpetuates this idea of what you'd like to see yourself like doing and achieving. Myself, how do I work towards like my goals? Well, I guess the first thing is I've got the Strava, so that's important. But I guess the biggest thing probably has been incorporating the idea of tempo runs. So you see, tempo runs is something that came to me kind of following a bit of an injury scare. And it was something that was kind of explained to me by my physio to say, hey, if you're running at, say, a race pace or you're doing intervals really quickly, if you kind of take it a little bit backwards and kind of keep that pace and hold it, you can kind of have like a lot of the benefits of kind of like running fast, but kind of grow that over a long period of time, which is kind of where the tempo was something I became really invested in. And I could kind of see, talking to that point that I've just mentioned about, having structured training, how I started at 4.5Ks and I was able to get that to about 10Ks, with the final 9 to 10K being what I call being creative, being the like interval where I'd run it as fast as I could, getting times as quick as 3 minutes 27 or around, the 3:30 ballpark, which is basically like faster than I ever achieved during an interval before, when I used to do intervals in, I think 2023 was maybe the last one, or sometime in 2024. This is like a huge progress for me to feel inspired to that, say, hey, started to kind of like have an amazing sense of like gratitude for that. And I guess my second structured run was something I came through by sharing my goals with ChatGPT, which is the idea of long runs. See, there's two components of like I guess like running fast, which I've kind of shared in another video. You've got to be able to obviously, you know, run really fast. But the second element is you've got to be able to come really efficient at kind of clearing the fatigue in your legs and kind of like having like a big enough like orange. So when you squeeze that orange, there's more juice that's going to come out. It's kind of like being able to just like tune yourself up. So when you do the fast efforts, you're able to leverage the big long runs that you do to kind of have enough to draw from so that you're, I guess, fit, in other words. Like you can have the speed, but the idea of the long runs and building that endurance give you that overall like fitness that blends into extending the length of that speed, if that makes sense. So it's kind of where I started with the idea of doing 12Ks as I think my first long run, or maybe it was 8. And then, or was it 10 maybe? I have to find out and I'll put it on screen. And then the idea of going from there to increasing it to eventually getting to 16Ks is my longest run ever. And I couldn't believe it. And I think it was my 15th, when I did the 15K long run. I was able to kind of hold an average of like 5 minutes and 6, I think it was, which is absolutely absurd because at the time of the run, I was like, there's no way I can hold this pace for such a long run. And I almost couldn't believe it, but I was just on fire that day and the training was really paying off. So that's kind of where the structured training filters into the idea of having the goals, because as you're kind of doing the training, you've got a bit of a yardstick to measure to see how you're going, which is really like inspiring as well. And then of course, I guess to kind of explain the Tempo-Val more is through by running in 24, I've been able to, I guess, explore my own creativity and come up with ways that I can actually be inspired to take myself to another level. So obviously I wanted to do interval runs, but I knew the importance of doing tempos. So I guess for the tempos, I kind of had this idea that, hey, in the last if I increase the tempo and it ends in 0.5, the last 500 meters of that tempo for the week, I'm going to run as fast as I can to simulate the idea of a race finish. This is something that kind of manifested as I would keep doing runs during the week and say, hey, the photo finish is so epic to have the photographers, get you running as fast as you can. And it looks amazing to finish, to cross that finish line, like, as fast as you can, to not basically like crawl across the finish line, but to finish with confidence, finish powerfully, and say that you did that. So that's kind of where, like, interestingly enough, on days where it was really hard to do the tempo, it actually kind of inspired me to say, hey, if we keep holding this at the end, we get 1 kilometer where we can go all out. And isn't that fun? Like, it almost made the whole run a warm up, which is really weird because it was still a really difficult run. But it kind of gave me something to look forward to, which is really stupid because it's not like I'm going to get myself some food. It's like, hey, I'm going to punish myself even more by running fast at the end. And I wonder how fast I can run at the end. Maybe that was kind of the point to say, well, how fast can we run it with fatigued legs? It was kind of like this challenge. And I guess kind of what made me feel safer was it was at the end of the run. So I was incredibly warmed up and it was only 1K. So it kind of wasn't like I was stop starting. It was that I was taking myself when I was really warm and ready to rock and roll to just kind of see what that final was and then simply, cool down and take it easy. In 2023, me and my girlfriend ran the half distance of the city to Bay, which is 6Ks. So in my mind, I knew I wanted to do the 6Ks again faster in 2024. So that was like my one big race for the year, but I didn't have anything else kind of to test myself really. I knew I could do park runs on Saturday, but I wasn't as excited for them for some reason. That was when in, I think June, July, August, June or July, I believe, I got a message from a teammate that said, hey, would you be interested in joining our running team for a running race, which is a 7-stage like running race, and they take the time of your team, top 5 members of your 7-person team, and average it to give you a team of time. And while we kind of weren't the best runners when we started, by the end of it, the final round, we were actually able to finish 4th out of all the guys in the competition, like all the guys, like not the guys, all of the fastest teams. We were number 4, which is actually pretty like mind blowing and pretty inspiring. So that kind of resulted in me thinking about shorter term distance goals. by that, I mean, it's the 4.5K distance, or 4.51 according to Strava. So while I do love running fast 5Ks, it's like basically that distance a little bit shorter, and seeing how fast I can run that. And this kind of builds into the City to Bay, because it's kind of just, by the final round, I was able to do like 17:21. So I was kind of like getting close to sub 17, but I just couldn't quite do it. So for me now, I've realized that, well, my goal for 2025 is to do a sub 17 corporate cup, and maybe even a sub 16 if that's possible. So it's kind of like just continuing to push and see how far I can take it, with like inspiring me to keep up the training and so on and so forth. So that's kind of like the first distance. And then we go to the City to Bay. So as I kind of finished the City to Bay in 2024 and finished 16th for men overall, and I think 20 including men and women for the 6K distance, I felt that I had, because I was basically a whole minute and a bit quicker than the year before, I'd achieved what I'd set out to, and I felt really confident in terms of what I had done. And I guess the onion peeled back a layer, and I didn't have the same excitement to do the actual half distance. Rather, it was the full distance I had my eyes set on to achieve, which meant that I had to set myself a goal of, well, what time would I finish this in? And that's where I kind of set the bold, ambitious goal of saying, hey, I would like to do this 12K in under 40 minutes. And that meant everything, because it's like, that's a really big goal, but it's something really cool to work towards. It's like, I think on average it's 3:27 a K, which I have ran 1K at that speed. So it's just a matter of timesing that by 11 and holding that. That's going to be pretty crazy. So I'm excited to give that a go. But that's kind of like my, I guess, so 4K distance, 4.5K distance goal, 12K goal, and then it comes to kind of what my next goal is, half marathon. Now, the longest run I've done, I've just mentioned, is about 16Ks, and the City to Bay is about 12. That takes place like mid-September. The Victor Harbour Half Marathon is this beautiful coastal half marathon. I think it's also a full marathon too. That just takes you through, like running all along the coast. It's 21.1 Ks, and a lot of my friends that have done this absolutely love it, and I think it'll be really inspiring and really fun to do. So that's kind of like what I want to do. And the beautiful thing about that is it comes after City to Bay. So it comes in on the 5th of December. So you've kind of got 2.5 months to train for it. So we kind of take the speed of the City to Bay and kind of just add another 9Ks. And I think that's something that's really exciting, because at that point you're over the halfway point doing 12. So by pushing a bit more, that's kind of where I wanted to see it. And it's not as much training as, to say, for a marathon, which is my next point. So you have, like, a lot of people I've seen are actually like running marathons in 24, and they've got plans for more marathons in 25. A lot of people would ask, like, am I going to run a marathon? And like, honestly, like, it doesn't feel like right to run a marathon just because everyone else is doing it. And I think that's what I kind of want to steal in you right now, is like the main point of this video, to say, hey, you need to be able to work out for you what goals you actually are inspired and want to do, because they're the ones that you've got to be more committed to, and they're the ones that you actually want to conquer and feel like you've conquered life through doing so. That's kind of where, like, I want to shift my focus and explain the importance of that. So for example, if I was to do a marathon, yes, I probably could do it right now. I'd probably suspect that I have a time between 4 hours and maybe 3:30. It would require a huge time sink and huge amount of training, which, I don't think I'm ready to commit to yet. But more than that, I was kind of speaking to my podiatrist, who is very, very fast runner. And he's like, look, you want to train for speed before you do your distance. If you do your distance, then try to do speeds a lot harder. So focus on the speed first, which is interesting, because reflecting on that, I really enjoyed the feeling of running fast, specifically under the speed time of, I think, 3:45. There's just something about moving your legs that quick, and just the energy and the feeling you get. It's unbelievable. You feel powerful. And that's kind of what I want to capture with kind of leveraging the shorter distances more and having that speed to kind of enable that feeling to keep going. And that's kind of like what I'm really looking forward to, if that makes sense. So that's kind of why I don't feel ready yet to do a marathon. And I know, as I've kind of talked before, tortoise and the hare as part of my branding, to say, hey, there's plenty of time still to kind of eventually, maybe in 26 or 27, decide, okay, well, now it's time to tackle a marathon after I built enough of the speed up. And I'm actually really happy with, how fast I can do a 5K, how fast I can do a 10K or 12, the City to Bay, to kind of give me confidence to say I'm ready to do a marathon, and I'm ready to do it, say, probably under 3 hours and 2:30 to 3, which would be a crazy first effort, but will also show that instead of kind of doing it one way, you can kind of build up to it and have a tremendous first debut in the marathon for that, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what I want to do, and I feel that might be a bit more of an efficient path. If I was to crystallize that and explain that to you and document that, I feel that would be a bit more efficient and inspiring, because something about running fast I want you to feel as well. That's kind of why I really enjoy it and kind of want to explain that to you. So I guess if I was to crystallize kind of how running went in 24, I was really smart. I took my lessons of 23 that had failed and kind of got myself injured, and kind of took the next step to say, how can we do this smarter? How can we do it safer? How can we have better structured running? How can we evaluate our progress along the way? And how can we participate in more things? So that means now, right, in terms of achieving, say, going back to the City to Bay. So Corporate Cup and City to Bay, they're two races around similar time. Now I'm already thinking of how many races I can do leading up to that, and how many to kind of see how my progress is going. For example, on the 2nd of February, there's a 10K running race, which is called City Run. And I want to be able to do that 10K in under 39 minutes. That will kind of put a yardstick to see how far away or along am I on for my progress to run the City to Bay in under the time I want. And then I believe there's a run in early July and end of July that's, I think, another 10 and a 14. So that kind of, again, is starting to see, can I run that other 10, in under 38 minutes perhaps? And then the 14, at a time that's quite in line with what I'm going for City to Bay. So it's kind of like looking at your goals, trying to figure out how to have more races along the way. You don't want to do too many races, but you kind of want to have stuff that are cool, check-in points, if that makes sense. So you check in and you save your progress, like in a video game. It's like saving, I guess, and to kind of inspire you at your training to say, next couple months I've got this, and then after a couple months more I've got this, and then during that my structured runs are going boom, 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 putting it into ChatGPT saying, work on this, try to have the long run faster at the second half, try to hold a bit more steady before you increase the distance for a tempo. It will give you that feedback in that kind of more one-on-one, which is really helpful to understand how you're going and to have that kind of coaching aspect to it. But I guess if you'd like more of a personal touch or some one-on-one advice on running and plans and stuff, I've got a link in the description below, and you can book a 60-minute session, and you can kind of share your running goals, what other goals you've got for fitness, and I can work with you towards them to figure out a good plan forward for 25 for you. Support me, get a copy of Life Cycles and have a transformative cycling journey today that starts now. And, you'll save so much time, money, and it's amazing. But I guess going back to this, conquered 24, ready to take that further for 2025. So showing you how to set up your goals and be smarter about your goals will help you be more likely to conquer them. Again, so as I always say, conquer mountains, conquer life. Thank you. someone that leverages my bike while working a 9 to 5 to conquer mountains in both a literal and figurative sense, in terms of saving time, money, and transportation, and taking my fitness to another level. If you'd like to start your own fitness and weight loss journey on the bike and just start your own journey overall, I've crystallized 7 years worth of learnings I've had on the bike into a product called Life Cycles, which you can obtain by buying through clicking the link in the description below. It will say Life Cycles. Click that, less than the cost of Uber Eats order. It'll support me. It'll take you to a completely new level, and it will help you start your journey with the beginner in mind. That's you. Okay, so here we are. We are kind of in 2025. I've got some like really big running goals I want to share. I kind of want to use it to keep myself accountable and kind of share what's coming up. So I've got some like big goals I'd like to share. So I kind of want to take this opportunity to explain how when I kind of first started, I wasn't so great at setting goals, and kind of where it's evolved over this last kind of year of documenting my progress. So